Hey guys, if we rewind a couple of weeks, you might remember that I did a video on things that have gone wrong with the car. And the final thing I mentioned was a problem with the brakes, and since then had the car booked in to have it looked at, and that was literally in the last couple of days. So I dropped the car off, went home, and then at the end of the day I get a call from Mercedes. So I was just expecting them to tell me that I could come back to pick up the car, but instead they said that the brakes had been sorted. However, one of the front tyres was on the verge of a full-on blowout. If anything, it should have already happened. The reason for that basically is that both front tyres were pretty worn, but the wear was very uneven, which is why I didn't actually notice how severe it was, but still at the end of the day, my fault. Obviously, I had a look on the forums, did my own research, and it's just something to be aware of if you've got one of the 45s basically, because it's a very common problem. So about a week ago I noticed that there's probably about 2mm left on the front tyres in terms of tread depth. As I've mentioned before, the gap between the tyre and the wheel arch is actually very small, so when the wheel is perfectly straight, it's very difficult to actually see what the tread depth is like right on the very inside. Plus, I just didn't expect them to wear that unevenly. So when they called me up, I did have a choice of two different types of tyres. The factory fitted Dunlops that come with this car, which is exactly what I didn't want, because no one really likes them. Why Mercedes put them on as standard, I've no idea, but everyone literally swaps them over to something else. Michelin's, Pirelli's, Continentals, that kind of thing. The other brand that they had was the Continentals, the Continental Sport Contact 5P, something like that. So I did a quick bit of research before I made my mind up, and they seem, they're better than the Dunlops. Probably not as good as the Michelin Pilot Sport 4. Lose track of all their names. I think Pilot Sport 4 or Super Sport something or other. You guys will correct me. Ideally, I would have wanted to put those on, but they didn't have any in stock, and I'd had a pretty busy week, and I had a long motorway journey to do literally the next day, and I didn't want to risk it, so I ended up going with the Continentals. So that does mean right now I'm running Continental up front and Dunlop at the rear, because the rears are actually fine. Right, so you should never ever park your car with the wheels like that, because obviously when you apply full lock, because of the camber and caster of the car, the wheel drops down and it's basically just unnecessary load on the front end of the car. So this isn't the old tyre that's come off, this is the new Continental that was put on. Here, so this is the section that you can see, when the wheels are straight, and there is probably about 2mm left. However, over to this side here, it was literally right down to the canvas. The canvas was actually showing, and I think you could just about make out the metal cabling. So it was literally, on the verge of full-on blowout. This is how you'd normally park your car, and as I said, you can't really see too far in. Like beyond this point here, you can't really see anything. Just if you do have like an A45, CLA45, GLA45, just make sure that you are checking your tyres quite regularly. The tyre wear is actually more apparent on the front than the rear. During the first service, which was back in February now, so that's what, 4 months, just under 4 months, Mercedes carry out something called a health check for their AMGs, where they get it up on the jacks and everything, and they give you like an assessment of the health of the car, I suppose, and they send you like a video link of a technician carrying it out. I'll play various bits of it in this video in the next few moments.
Vehicle today, just want to let you know your vehicle has a clean bill of health, and I'll be walking through it with you now. Your near side front tyre tread depth is on 4mm, just above 3, which we advise you when it gets to 3mm. Suspension's all good, there's no play, there's no splits or rips in any ball joints or rubber boots. Front pads are worn to 10%. Moving over to the offside front tyre tread depth, which is 5mm, all good. Suspension's all good, there's no play, there's no splits or rips in any rubber boots or ball joints, no cracks in the alloy. Offside front, brake pads also 10%. Moving on the underbody of the vehicle, your exhaust system's all good, shows no signs of leaks or rust. No leaks coming from your differential, no splits in the boots. Near side rear suspension springs all good, there's no cracks, there's no play. No play. No splits in the brake lines. Tyre tread depth is 6mm. Moving over to the offside rear suspension spring. As you can see here, it's all good, no play. No cracks. No splits in any brake lines. No cracks in the alloy.
So yeah, so 4 months ago, the rears were at roughly 6mm each. And when the car went in a few days back, the rears were at 5mm. So in 4 months, they'd only basically gone down by a millimetre, which is pretty good. But the fronts were at, I think, what was it, 4 or 5, around 4 or 5mm, and they've basically gone down to almost zero, especially on the inside edge. There are 3 main reasons as to why the tyre wear occurs in the way it does. The disparity between the front and the rear and the way the fronts kind of wear. First reason is that although this car is 4-wheel drive, it's a Haldex system, which basically means that most of the time the car is front wheel drive and it only sends power to the rear when the fronts lose traction, and that works in conjunction with the second reason, which is the amount of power that this car has. 380 horsepower isn't a small amount, and when you consider that 90% of the time all that power is being sent through the front wheels, that's all that slippage, etc., it's naturally just going to wear the tyres down quicker. Then the third and final reason is not as apparent as the first two. The first two you could have guessed that immediately. The third one is more apparent with the AMGs than, say, Audi or BMW, and that's the overall front end setup on this car and the A45 GLA 45. It's got a very aggressive caster and camber setup. Normally you'd expect a 4-wheel drive Haldex car like this to understeer, but the grip is actually pretty good, but the sacrifice is that you do get that strange tyre wear. When you turn the wheels are never perfectly vertical. They kind of either bent in slightly, and as you turn it becomes more exaggerated, pronounced, etc. The S3, RS3 for example, the front end setup isn't as aggressive as this car, and actually though the Audis tend to understeer a bit more when you're pushing 10 tenths. I mean, with the AMG you do get a more overall balanced handling, but like I said, it comes at a price, and it's just something to be aware of if you've already got a car like this, or if you're considering one for the future, because you can see yourself needing to change tyres quite often. I know one thing that some people do that I haven't done, but I would like to do now, is just to rotate the tyres. From reading up on the forums, I believe every 5,000 miles is a good number, just to help out with the uneven wear. As I've said before, the rears you don't really need to pay too much attention to. They've still got 5mm left. So also keep an eye on your tyre pressures as well. If your tyres are underinflated, your tyres will wear down quicker. If they're overinflated, you risk more chance of a puncture or a blowout, but you'd rather be safe than sorry. I'd suggest going towards the overinflated side rather than being too underinflated. Also, having more air in the tyres will also result in better fuel economy. So the only downside of higher tyre pressures is there's a smaller contact patch on the road. You could argue that's less grip, more dangerous in the wet, but these are very minor differences and changes. More often than not you'll rarely be able to notice them. So hopefully I provided you with some insight into tyre wear and just general maintenance. Definitely caught me out. It's a mistake that I won't be making in the future, that's for sure. If you're wondering how many miles I did before I needed to change the fronts, I think it was, find out for you now. So this is reading 12,200 miles, but you know, that is with literally, it was like almost 0 millimeters left on the inside front of the Dunlop. So let's say 12,000 miles. Whether that's normalish, I'm not sure. Once again, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.